Have you ever looked back at a chapter of your life, a job, a career, a path you chose, and thought, why did I stay so long? What was I thinking? Did I make the wrong choice? I definitely have, and honestly, more than once. And what I want to talk about today is the idea that the wrong path doesn't actually exist. Not in the way we think it does, because most of the time, when we feel like we took a wrong turn, we didn't make a mistake. We just outgrew where we were. And there is a difference. And understanding that difference changed everything for me. By the end of this video, here's what I want you to walk away with. I want you to understand why the wrong path doesn't actually exist and what is really going on when it feels like it does. I want to give you the tools to tell the difference between outgrowing a path and simply going through a hard season that is worth staying for. I want to show you through my own story that the detours, the pivots, the chapter that didn't go as planned are not setbacks. They are some of the most valuable investments you will ever make in yourself. And I want to leave you with a way of understanding why these moments hit as hard as they do. So that next time you're in the middle of one, you respond from a place of clarity rather than fear. If any of that resonates, let's get into it. I would like to start this conversation by sharing something personal. I am someone who spent way too much time feeling like she was in the wrong room. I've been in environments where my value system felt compromised, where the culture around me didn't match who I was, where I looked at the leadership above me and thought, I don't want to become them. I felt misaligned, demotivated, and honestly stuck. And all of this affected me so deeply. It made me sad, it made me angry, it made me question myself in ways I wasn't prepared for. Because when you tie your identity to your work and you take genuine pride in what you do, and then you stop enjoying it, something more than your job starts to shake. Your confidence shakes, your sense of self shakes. And I will definitely come back to that later because I think this is one of the most important things to understand about those moments of life. And honestly, here's what made it harder. My life looked good on paper. How could I possibly complain? So I mostly stayed quiet, and that isolation made everything worse. I'm sharing this story with you because I want to be, for you, the person I needed back then. Someone who says, I see you. Other people have been here, and there's a way for this. Now, let me share a specific moment I'm not particularly proud of and honestly still cringe thinking about. I remember the day I walked into a meeting with my manager and said that I feel behind. And I genuinely believed it. I thought I had made wrong career choices and that everyone around me was moving ahead while I was being left behind. What I didn't understand then was where the feeling was actually coming from. And I know now I was basically comparing myself to someone I had started my career with at the same time, same starting points, different paths. And because the path looked more linear, more impressive, more visible, I decided I was behind. But behind on whose timeline and by whose rulebook? There's a name for that, and it's called destination thinking. And it's one of the most common and damaging patterns I see in ambitious people. Destination thinking is the belief that there's a fixed point you should have reached by a certain time. A title, a salary, a level of security that signals to yourself and to the world that you are on track, that you are enough. And here's where it comes from. It comes from everything around you. From watching peers get promoted, from everyone who measures success in visible way, from LinkedIn, which is essentially a highlight reel of everyone's else milestone with none of the mess of the journey. The dangerous thing about destination thinking is that it doesn't feel like a distortion. It feels like clarity. It feels like you are simply being honest with yourself about where you stand. But it is also misleading because it assumes that there is one map, one route, one legitimate way to go from A to B. And if you're not following that route, then you are lost. And I'm here to tell you that you're not lost. You're just on a different map. I made a deliberate choice to step off the linear path. I had switched industries, taken career breaks, chosen experiences over titles. And then I was measuring myself against someone who had done the complete opposite, who had stayed the course, climbed one ladder consistently. We weren't even playing the same game, but destination thinking had convinced me we were. And obviously comparison is human, and you will do it, and I still do it sometimes. But when you compare yourself to someone else's visible wins, you're only seeing part of the picture. You're not seeing what they had to compromise. You are not seeing how they feel on the inside, and you're not seeing where your own path is actually taking you. Life is long. The person you're comparing yourself to right now may still have the prestigious title in 20 years' time, but you might be in a completely different pool, one you built yourself doing work that actually means something to you. Now, let me name the different way this shows up, because it doesn't always look the same. And I have found for you 5 different scenarios I want to share that illustrate this. Sometimes you never fully choose the path in the first place. You followed the logical next step after your studies. You went in a direction your family expected, or took the opportunity that seemed sensible at the time. And for a while, that was enough. But at some point, you develop enough self-awareness to realize you have been living someone else's idea of a good career, not your own. All the time, you were on a path that genuinely worked for you. And then something changed. Maybe a new leadership came in. The culture shifted. The environment you thrived in was replaced by one that feels foreign and misaligned. You didn't change. Your environment did. All the time, you did everything right. You set the goals, you worked hard, you got there, you got the promotion, the titles, the milestone you've been working towards, and then you arrive and you feel nothing. You achieve the destination and discover it wasn't actually yours. This is one of the most confusing forms of outgrowing your path, because everything looks like success. And sometimes, and this is the one I find most interesting, you stayed on the same path for years, and then you change. Your values evolved, your priorities shifted, the things that used to motivate you stopped working, and you woke up one day in a life that was designed for a previous version of yourself. As you can see, none of these scenarios mean you made a mistake. They mean you are a person who grew. But before I move on, I want to address the question I know some of you are already sitting with. How do I know if I have genuinely outgrown this, or I'm just going through a hard season that is worth staying for? And this is my fifth scenario. And it is the most important distinction of all. There are moments in every career where things are difficult, not because you've outgrown the path, but because you are in the middle of growing into it. A steep learning curve that hasn't paid off yet. A new role where you haven't found your footing. A challenge stretching you in ways that feels uncomfortable, but actually building something important. If you leave every time it gets hard, you never found out what you're capable of. You can develop a pattern where discomfort always reads as a signal to exit, when sometimes it is just actually a signal to push through. So how do you tell the difference? And to that question, I have 3 questions you can ask yourself. And honestly, I wish someone had given me those earlier. Is it hard because I am growing or because I am shrinking? Growth feels like uncomfortable, but you have a direction. You are stretching toward something. Shrinking feels like pain without any progress. Now, are my values intact? You can tolerate a difficult environment or a heavy workload as long as your core values are not being constantly compromised. The moment you are regularly being asked to act against who you are, that is not a hard season. That is misalignment. And who are you becoming here? Not what are you achieving, but who is this environment turning me into? More confident, more capable, more yourself, or more anxious, more guarded, and a smaller version of who you were? Because the goal is not to leave at the first sign of difficulty. But it is not to stay out of fear, loyalty, or inertia either. Both leaving too early and staying too long come from the same roots. The absence of a clear internal compass. When you know your values, what you need to thrive, the decision becomes clearer. Not easier, but clearer. I want to shift gear here now, because so far we have talked a lot about the difficulties. And I think it is time to talk about what they actually give you. The less visible path, the one with the detours and the pivots, give you things the straight path simply cannot. Not as a consolation prize, as a genuine competitive advantage. So let me demonstrate this through my own story. Before I left JP Morgan, I made an internal move first, and stepping into a different challenge before making my big leap. That experience taught me I could learn fast and earn credibility in a room where I was starting without it. It told me that taking a step back is not failure. It is strategy, especially when it allows you to make a couple of steps forward. And that shift in thinking is what made every pivot after possible. Later, when I moved into luxury retail at Louis Vuitton, I discovered something I never would have found staying in one place. I had far more to offer than I ever gave myself credit for. When you stay in the same environment for too long, you start to believe that what you do is normal, that everyone can do it. But moving somewhere completely different made my strength suddenly visible to others, but more to myself. I found my superpowers by stepping out of my comfort zone. And my consulting chapter gave me the most valuable skills of my career: the framework, the structure, the ability to take a complex, messy problems and break it down. Not only that, but also the range to walk into unfamiliar challenges and become useful fast. I use those skills every single day now, and I know I always will. Here's what I want you to take from this. The things you gain on the less traveled path are real and concrete. Resilience, self-knowledge, range, perspective, things that can only be earned by someone who has been tested and made it through the other side. And then you realize that every door you walk through, even the difficult ones, gave you something you needed for what came next. And when you can see that clearly, the word mistake stopped making sense entirely. There were no mistakes. It was all leading somewhere. It always was. Now I want to get practical, because knowing that it will be worth it eventually doesn't help much when you are in the thick of it right now. But before I get to the practical advice, I want to name something that I think explain why this moment hit as hard as they do. Something that took me a long time to understand about myself. When high achievers go through a difficult chapter at work, like the one I describe, what is really happening underneath is not just a bad job situation. It is an identity threat. Many of us build our sense of self around our professional success. The company name on our CV, the title on our email signature, the ability to walk into a room and know that you are good at what you do. Work is not just what we do, it is who we are. It is how we measure our worth. And when that gets disrupted, when the job stops going well, when the environment stops reflecting back the capable, high-performing version of ourselves we are used to seeing, it doesn't just feel like a professional setback. It feels like a personal one. It feels like I am failing rather than this situation is failing me. And the more your sense of self is built on your success, the more destabilizing it is when that success feels threatened. I was that person. I'm still that person to some degree. Though, no, it's changed everything. So now, going back to practical terms, what do you do when you have outgrown your path? And I know what I'm going to share is not easy to at all, but do not freeze. Do not react in the moment. Quietly build your options so you always have a way out, even if you don't take it. And find something outside of work that reminds you of who you are. It could be a project, a course, a community, something entirely yours. If your self-worth is being tested right now, hear this. You're not what this chapter says you are. You're someone with something real to offer, who is simply in the wrong room right now. And the person who walks out the other side of this will not be the same as the person who walked in it. That is not something to be sad about. That is everything. Let me bring this back to where we started. You didn't choose the wrong path. You chose a path, you walked it, you learned what you needed to learn, and at some point, you might have outgrew it. And that is not failure. That is evolution. And if you are in the middle of one of those chapters right now, don't shrink, don't freeze, don't wait for someone else to decide your next move. You're still the author of your own story, so act like it. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I would love to hear what you personally took away from it. So please let me know in the comments. And subscribe for more of this conversation. And I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on the Level Up with Virginie channel. For more insight on how to build a life that is truly yours, be sure to subscribe to my